After getting so close to capturing one over and over again, Russians actually managed to capture one Leopard 2 tank, more than a year after they'd been delivered to Ukraine. And not just any Leopard 2, but the Leopard 2A6, one of the most advanced main battle tanks out there. We have seen Russians take pictures next to this tank several times before, and even a video from one of them managing to get on top of the tank, and we know it is the same tank based on several things. The markings on the turret match perfectly, the burn marks on the left side as well, and of course there is the cage armor on the turret sides as well. And we also have footage of this tank being knocked out by the Russians, which I also covered back when it happened. If you want to know more about the incident, I suggest you go and check out the video. But in short, the tank was a part of an assault together with some Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, where it then got hit by what is presumed to be an RPG rocket, catching fire and prompting the crew to abandon the tank. Thankfully, all 4 crew members survived and they managed to get back to one of the Bradleys and retreat. This all happened back in October of 2023, so the tank had been sitting out there for a while. But then we got the footage of it being towed away by the Russian Brem recovery vehicle, this time missing both of its tracks. The tracks were removed because towing a tank like that does not require the final drive to be disconnected, since the sprocket wheel is what is connected to the final drive. The wheels can always be rotated, but if the tank is parked and in gear, towing it would not be possible because the sprocket wheel would not allow the tracks to move. Removing the tracks simply allows the wheels to rotate with the sprocket still being blocked. Then we got a video of the tank being transported on a truck through the streets, and then finally at a depot, where we got a good look at the state of the tank and also hear what Russians have to say about it. The first video we got starts with the guy mislabeling the tank as Leopard 2A5. Not that big of a deal, I guess. He goes on to say it's a big and heavy tank, and then he goes on to say that the tank drove over a mine and got abandoned by the crew, which is how it lost one of its tracks. But this is not the case. We know what happened to this tank. We have seen numerous pictures and videos of it just sitting there abandoned, with both of its tracks still attached to the tank. We can also see in other videos that there is absolutely nothing resembling any kind of damage a mine would do to a tank. So him saying it drove over a mine is simply not true. Problem is that this is getting parroted by every piece of Russian media covering the story. Imagine being the guy that actually hit this Leopard and now everyone is saying that it just drove over a mine and drones hit it on the top and started a fire. I would personally not like that. But anyway, let's actually take a look at the vehicle itself. We can see that internally it is the loader station that burned the most, which makes sense since the fire started on the left side of the tank. I assume the fire managed to get in through the hatches as well, since we can see a lot of burning around the loaders and commander's hatches, but the further down we go, the less damage there is. If we look at the pictures of the interior and compare them to the pictures of the intact Leopard 2A6, we can see that the loader station is burned quite a bit. Instruments, and especially the spoil liner, seem to have caught on fire. The area appears to be charred quite a bit with clear burn marks on the metal as well. The pressure gauge appears to be okay though. But if we move over to the other side, things appear to be better. Commander station seems to have burned mostly around the hatch, with the periscopes being pretty burned. Going further down to the gunner station, the situation appears to be even better. There is obviously some scorch marks, but the instruments and the plastic pieces seem to be in one piece without any damage from the fire. So it is possible that the internal components are fine. Hard to tell. High temperature could have caused damage to the electronics, even if there is no visible damage to the exterior. Depends of course on how long the fire burned around the area. The driver's station appears to be in the best condition. There is no visible scorch marks, but everything appears to be pretty dirty from the smoke and the fire burning in the upper parts of the tank. The pressure gauge and the rest of the instruments all seem to be in good condition. One clear indicator that the fire did not burn inside the hull is that the ammunition which was stored in the hull did not burn. We can see that there is still DM53A1 and M1028 canister shells still placed in the hull ammo storage and appear to be intact. The propellant of DM53A1 is insensitive, which means that it catching fire from penetrating hits is significantly reduced. But if there is fire burning around the propellant from other sources, it will burn as well. So the fact that both DM53A1 and M1028 did not burn means that there was no fire in the hull, at least not anywhere close to the ammo storage or the driver. Speaking of the shells, we also get a look at the loadout of this Leopard 2A6, since the Russians were kind enough to show us what kind of ammunition the tank was loaded with. On top of previously mentioned DM53A1 and the M1028 canister ammunition, there is also what appears to be German DM11 multi-purpose high explosive. I saw some people say this is the Israeli M339 high explosive shell, but that is not the case. M339 has more of a generic look, how to say. Well, this one has the identical shape to the one of the German DM11. The markings on the projectile itself are identical to the one of DM11, but only lack the actual DM11 marking on it. The lot number also starts with the RHU, which most likely states it was produced by Rheinmetall, since all of their projectiles have this prefix to the lot number. At first, I thought it could be the non-programmable regular high explosive shell based on the DM11, the RH31. But RH31 has HE frag marking on the projectile, while DM11 has MPHE, which stands for multi-purpose high explosive, same as the one captured by the Russians. So what can Russians actually learn from this captured tank? Well, either nothing or a lot, depends on who you ask. In one of the media reports, the reporter stated that the workings of the fire control system and the stabilization in the turret drive would be the most interesting parts to the Russian experts for analysis. This would make sense since the Leopard 2 stabilization system and the turret drive are much better designed than the Russian ones, mainly because Leopard 2A6 uses electric drive and stabilizer, while the Russians use hydraulic. Of course, they did testing on a lot of their prototypes with the electric drives with good results, but they were always rejected because of the cost. Maybe examining the Leopard 2A6 will make them reconsider that idea. Now, to me personally, what I think they would find the most interesting are the insensitive propellants found in the DM53A1 and the DM11. These propellants are made to significantly reduce the chances of the propellant catching fire when hit. If they could develop something similar, they would significantly reduce the amount of tank losses, since the biggest drawback of their tanks is how the ammunition is placed in the tank, which is in the carousel outloader inside the crew compartment. So of course, using an insensitive propellant instead of the one they are currently using would have a significant impact on their losses. DM11 also has some type of an insensitive HE filler, which can also be examined by the Russians and, if copied, used as a filler for their HE shells. Insensitive HE fillers usually have less power than the sensitive ones, but the small reduction in performance is, in my opinion, worth preserving the life of the crew and keeping the tank in one piece if it does end up getting penetrated. While we are on the topic of the ammunition, Russians will definitely try to replicate the German projectiles and possibly the gun in order to test the performance of German projectiles against the armor of their tanks, and if needed, make changes to their armor. Now, speaking of armor, there is always the armor of the Leopard 2A6 itself to test against the Russian munitions. They will probably try to replicate the armor as well, and test it against different kinds of things they have, AT-GMs, AT-rockets, or tank-fired APFSES and heat shells. Of course, I don't imagine they will be firing at the tank itself, but they will probably try to replicate the armor and make a composite block based on the armor of the tank, and shoot at that, something similar to what was done on the Swedish tank trials back in the 90s. When it comes to the automotive parts, I don't think there is anything they can learn. The engine and the transmission are nothing new, and a lot of information about them can be found online anyway. Not to mention that the Russians have already developed automatic transmissions with good reverse speeds. It's just that it's only currently used in the T-14 Armata, which is not in active service, but they do know how all of that stuff functions. The tank will probably be thoroughly examined and then put on display together with other captured equipment. They are already putting out captured Bradley, Marder and other vehicles on display in Moscow, and I would expect them to parade the captured vehicles, including the Leopard 2A6, on the upcoming Victory Parade in May. How will they do that depends if they manage to fix the tank enough for it to be in the drivable condition. The guy in the original video said that they are planning to completely fix it up, and that it will take 2 days, but I sincerely doubt it. They don't have any spare parts, so if they want to replace something, they have to make it themselves based on the broken part itself, which is not an easy thing to do. But who knows, maybe they will manage to do it by some miracle. That would be all for now. If you like my content, you can support me on Patreon. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.